Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Very pleased to say, joining us tonight, the Mirror's John Cross and Charlotte Duncker from the Times. Welcome to you both. Great to have you here. Let's quickly run through the back pages to set the scene. This is the I back page. Deeply ashamed that Dujardin pulls out of Olympics. The Guardian, Team GB fire up with weather forecasts and full fat Coke. Murray's ready for last ever tournament before retiring. The last dance. And the Times has Dujardin hit her horse 24 times on legs. Murray's perfect Paris send-off, while Mott set to leave role with England's limited overs team. Mirror, possible Sancho getaway, big transfer story. I'm deeply ashamed, Dujardin again. Games, set and match. That's Murray once more. French fancy against Sancho to PSG, covered with Eric Ten Hag pictured in set as well. Prem in on FIFA attack, the other story alongside it. The Mail back page, De Bruyne and City set for showdown, while Team GB hire their own weather forecaster. Well, let's start with the Times. Charlotte, I'll come to you for this. Dujardin hit her horse 24 times on legs. There's a developing story regarding Charlotte Dujardin. We know she has withdrawn from the Olympics and now has a 6-month ban. Just how big a story is this, Charlotte, just a few days out from the Olympics in Paris?
Yeah, it's absolutely massive. I think my colleague there has described it as one of the biggest scandals that we've seen in Olympic history, and it's on the eve of the Olympics. I think all the build up to this, a lot of it has been around Charlotte because she could have become the most decorated female Olympian of all time if she'd won any medal at this Olympics. And obviously now, as you've seen on the back page of quite a few newspapers, she's withdrawn because this video footage has been presented to the FEI of her allegedly hitting a horse. She says it was a few years ago. I think privately people have raised questions as to why this video has come to light now, because obviously she's been banned immediately. She's apologised profusely for her actions. She said that she's ashamed, she's disappointed. She has withdrawn herself from the Olympics. And obviously there is going to be a full investigation now. There's going to bring up a lot of questions about animal welfare. This is the first Olympics where there is an animal welfare officer at the Olympics. So that's moving on from the previous one where there were questions about the way that the horses were being treated. So it's an absolutely massive scandal. She was supposed to be one of the Olympic poster girls for Team GB in this Olympics. So they're going to have to pull themselves together and see how they can move on from this.
Absolutely. I suppose people are speculating on the timing. John, it was a video from 4 years ago, we understand. The eye goes with Dujardin's comments which preceded the news of the ban coming out. And most of us haven't seen the video as of yet, but deeply ashamed, Dujardin pulls out of the Olympics. Female GB Olympian is provisionally suspended after video emerges of the equestrian rider whipping horse. I suppose in terms of Team GB, John, how potentially damaging is it for the atmosphere in the equestrian team and beyond?
Well, it's an incredibly emotional statement, isn't it, really, that really doesn't shy away from, involvement in it and sort of, tackles it head on, really. Look, I think, Teddy, the point is, for me, it almost sets the narrative for Team GB going into the games. That's how damaging it is, because we are talking, as Charlotte rightly said, that basically one of Team GB's biggest stars, biggest hopes, potential history maker already, the joint most decorated female in Olympic history for Team GB, and the chance then to go one better. So that's how big it is, really. I mean, I look at sort of kind of previous Olympic Games, going back as, I don't know, somewhere as far back as, Sydney 2000, so Steve Redgrave, hoping to make sort of history with yet more medal success. Or, you have, in London 2012, for example, you had, the great hopes with the athletics. This was one of the big events. This was one of the big hopes. This was one of the biggest stories for Team GB. And I have to say, it frames it really badly. 3 days out? And it's come at a rotten time. It will set a really bad negative agenda and a narrative against the whole team going into it, because, you know, come the end of the games, we'll be looking back and saying, well, everything's said and done, but on the back of this scandal, just, you know, as I say, 3 days ahead of the games, it's absolutely massive. It's a huge blow. I think it's a massive blow for her legacy, her standing in the sport, her standing as Olympic great, and also, you know, it really, the preparations for the team generally, I think, moving forward to Paris.
Indeed, it's a person with a record already that's going to stand the test of time, I'm sure, Charlotte. Potentially, though, at 39 years of age, I'm assuming that in equestrian circles, LA 2028, not out of the question. It's a 6-month ban. Is there any way back for her? Could you see her setting the all-time record ahead of Dame Laura Kenny in 4 years' time?
I'm not sure in this situation that the problem is around her age or how many years she's got left in equestrian. I think the bigger problem is going to be, can she rebuild her reputation? And that's all going to come down to what comes out in this investigation. What do the British equestrian find on the back of it? What do they decide to sanction? She's obviously got she teaches children as well. Is that going to harm her reputation? There was a really nice video of her little girl riding a horse, and she was talking about wanting to go to the Olympics and doing her proud and all that sort of stuff. And it's all the family side of it as well, and not just the Olympics, but everything around her standing within the sport. So I don't just think it's an age thing. I think it's going to be how this plays out overall. If she's found guilty of anything, how long is she banned for? What does that do to her reputation over time? I think that's going to be the bigger question.
Interesting how the story develops, and indeed that Dujardin's legacy is reflected upon in the future. Let's talk about a sports person whose legacy seems pretty secure in Andy Murray. Go back to the back page of the Times. Murray's perfect Paris send-off, confirming, John, that Paris will be his last ever tennis tournament. Is it fitting that it comes at the Olympics? Is that his greatest achievement in some ways, those back-to-back titles?
Yeah, Olympic champion, 3 slams, double Wimbledon. I always make a case for this, and, people may disagree, but I do think I always make a case and a strong argument for him being Britain's all-time greatest sportsman. I think for him to do what he did, win slams, also become world number one, and also end that. Do you remember every summer we had for years and years and years, will we ever get another men's Wimbledon champion? And the answer was no. And then Andy Murray comes along, thrills us all with his wonderful style, by the way, and does it all in the greatest era of tennis, against Djokovic, against Nadal. It's just absolutely Federer. It's absolutely amazing. He fought his way against the 3 greats, and basically he did what I guess England football have been seeking to do since '66, and it's that difficult. But he did it, and he thrilled us all with it. And I think it's particularly fitting that he should go. It didn't quite work out for him as a Wimbledon farewell, did it? Really, last month. So I do think this is almost the sort of second take for Andy Murray. But I really hope he gets the send off that he deserves. Look, I know people will argue. I mean, listen, my great friend and colleague Andy Dunn is sort of a regular on this parish. It will always make the case he's not even the greatest British, tennis player of all time. He says Fred Perry is. But look, I just think he's above everyone else just because of the era and the achievement. I think he's fabulous, Andy Murray. And I think it's, I really hope he can do himself justice. He's been plagued by injuries, refuses to give up. And let's hope he gets a really fitting farewell, because he really deserves it.
Andy Dunn looks very good for his age then, if he's seen Fred Perry play, to be fair. 1930, I think it was the last time he won his slam. But I get the point. Let's continue the debate, though, Charlotte, with the Telegraph and Oliver Brown writing his top 5 of greatest sportsmen from the island of Britain. Sir Ian Botham, number 5, Daley Thompson, number 4, Sir Lewis Hamilton, number 3, and Sir Bobby Charlton, number 2, with Murray there is number 1. As a boxing fan, I'm perhaps surprised no Lennox Lewis, last undisputed heavyweight world champion, a Brit. What do you make of Murray's candidacy to be the greatest ever sportsman from the shores?
Yeah, I think everything that John says is absolutely true. I think for me, if you look at what Sir Bobby Charlton did, I know that John was saying that before privately, he was saying, well, that was a team sport that he did it in, and Andy Murray's done it all by himself. But I think if you look what Sir Bobby Charlton went through in his life, in his career, what he managed to do after the Munich air disaster. I think for me, he'd probably just pip it. But if you look at, Andy Murray's had an astonishing career, hasn't he? And I think it is so fitting for him that he gets to do his final tournament at the Olympics, because I think if you went back to 2012 when he won gold at Wimbledon, I think people's perceptions of him changed. I think that's when he won over the great British public. I think before then everyone joked that when he lost he was Scottish and when he won he was British, and that was the only time that British people were interested in him. But when he stood crying on centre court just 4 weeks after he'd lost at the Wimbledon final and he took home gold, and I think everyone's perception of him changed. And I think the reaction he got when he said his final Wimbledon farewell just showed how fondly he's thought of, and all the work he's done in the game as well with children, and the legacy that he leaves behind is absolutely unbelievable. So he's well within his right to be in that, right at the top of that conversation of the best sportsman this country's ever produced.
Indeed, we wish him a good farewell in Paris on the clay of Roland Garros. So let's talk more Team GB more broadly before we take a commercial break. John, The Guardian have the heat is on. Team GB fire up with weather forecasts and full fat Coke. In fairness, this is triathlete Georgia Taylor-Brown who has Coke, but also says it's great to have mouthwash before you swim in the Seine, apparently, probably for health and safety rules. What about the BBC weather presenter Penny Tranter is going to give them weather forecasts? Is it going to work? I mean, is Paris more predictable than the UK?
I love this story. It's Sean Ingle, isn't it, really? And it's really great, actually, because I almost liken it. Do you remember when every new manager comes in and bans ketchup?
Yes.
Right, and stuff like that, and it feels exactly the same, but just for the Olympics, really. And I love the difference that full fat Coke will make, and so it's the little details. Look, I think there's been a lot of talk about the saying, isn't there? Well, good luck if if the kind of they're trying to sort of bat away the sort of kind of the talk about whether it's polluted or not. I'm sure if it is polluted, then I'm not sure how much difference mouthwash will make. So good luck with that. But look, they've put absolutely everything into that to try and make it safe and to try and reassure people, because it will be such a sort of kind of centerpiece of the Paris Games. I cannot wait for the Olympic Games. And I always think that basically you have to use the local landmarks, don't you, really, as part to really make it feel like special, and I love some of the build up in this week. So I do think they'll need every trick in the book, including full fat Coke, to win those medals in the triathlon, I think. Yeah,
I guess triathletes burning that many calories can probably get away with full fat Coke more than the rest of us, can't they? Charlotte, what's your take on all the quirky preparations? I suppose within that story about the Seine and mouthwash, there is a serious one, isn't there? There seems a lot of focus on the river in Paris and making sure all the athletes are healthy.
Yeah, of course. But if you go back to the weather forecaster, I think it's all about, we always talk about when we talk about football, don't we? They bring in people for those tiny marginal gains, and that's what makes the difference in terms of that's what wins you titles, that they're hoping that's what's going to win the medals. And I think a lot of these sports, especially the long distance ones, it's all about the mental strength, isn't it? And the mental preparation. So if you know that you're going into your event in 2 days' time and suddenly it's going to go up to 38 degrees and you're going to be in the blistering heat, at least you've got time to get your head around that. So on paper, it does sound a bit ridiculous maybe that they've hired a weather forecaster, because we're all capable of checking the weather wherever we're going for the next day, aren't we? But I think to get an expert in there just to give them that extra little bit of edge, I think they're trying to do anything possible to hope that Team GB can finish as high up the medal tables as possible.
Welcome back. You are watching Back Pages tonight, and it's welcome back to the Mirror's John Cross and Charlotte Duncker from the Times. Let's go to the Mirror, John. Your paper, possible Sancho getaway on the back page. Tell us about this, John.
Well, it's an interesting one because, a week on from Sancho making peace with Ten Hag, we suddenly think that basically PSG might be in for him. And look, they are, being quoted £40 million if they want to do a deal for Sancho, which almost makes you think, United wanted to find some piece to kind of make him almost marketable. Because honestly, if they hadn't bridged that gap, then where's the market? And you almost feel like, well, okay, he'll just ride it out and see it out, and there wouldn't be a market there. But this is a really talented player. This is a really, really good player who I think basically possibly needs a fresh start, even though he's kissed and made up with Ten Hag, and sort of kind of, after that sort of kind of social media row and sort of being loaned out to Dortmund, he showed in flashes, and I would say flashes, at Dortmund, just what a good player. Reminded, that he's such a great, the epitome of a modern winger, as I call him, really, because he's so technical, he's very skillful, he's very intelligent, makes great, decision making, lays on things, scores goals, assists, and he really sort of entertains as well. And so I do think there's a smashing player there, but I do think, though, that perhaps after everything's said and done, even though the sort of apologies and handshakes have been made, I wonder whether it's chance to go. And I think he'd just be a sensation at a fresh club if he can find some consistency and form. PSG probably like what they saw in that Champions League semi-final against Dortmund, didn't they, to be honest?
Played very well in that. French fancy is the headline on the back page of the Star, Charlotte. PSG casting admiring glances at £40 million Sancho. What's your take, Charlotte? Is it a good fee to get for the player, or at 24 years of age, is there a chance that Manchester United live to regret letting him go?
I think obviously if you look at the fee that Manchester United paid for him, and then the money, if they do manage to recoup 40 million for him, and look at how he's played for them, bear in mind this was a protracted transfer saga getting him there. He was a massive target for them. They were delighted when they got him through the door. It's just not worked out for him at Manchester United. So I think 40 million, really cut your losses, get 40 million in for him, because as John was saying, they kissed and made up last week. But to me, that just felt as if pre-season's coming. Both parties need him to have a good pre-season. United need him to have a good pre-season so they can get as much money for him. Sancho himself wants to put himself in the shop window and go somewhere where he's going to play regularly. Played the second half against Rangers. They fly to LA tomorrow. They've got 3 games in America. Can he put himself in the shop window to beyond PSG and show that maybe it is worth taking a chance and paying 40 million for him? So, yeah, it would be financially detrimental to obviously lose money on him, but is it more beneficial to do that than possibly have a player in your team who's not going to play week in, week out, who could just sit on the bench and see out his contract? So for me, yeah, I think 40 million would probably be a fair recouping for them.
Really interested to see how it plays out, especially England fans will be watching with interest, won't they? Could do a job down the left-hand side potentially in the future. John, let's talk Manchester City, though. John, back page of the Mail. De Bruyne and City set for showdown. Guardiola insists Star will stay at Etihad for now. De Bruyne's 33. John, missed a lot of football last season. Do you think there's going to be a combustion there between him and Guardiola, or will this be solved amicably and he'll leave peacefully?
Well, Jack Gaughan's piece really is saying that Guardiola would make it absolutely clear he wants him to stay for the final year. And then really City also want to know what De Bruyne's longer term plans are. Really, I think that's the key. I think that there'll be no shortage of offers, particularly as we know there's been interest from Saudi Pro League. So there'll be interest in one of the Premier League all-time great players. I mean, what a star he's been for Manchester City, driving force of the Guardiola era. Guardiola, success been really pinned and built on him and his excellence in midfield. So look, last season it did feel as if when he played, he was as brilliant as ever. I mean, we all saw games, didn't he, when he absolutely dominated. But again, he missed a hell of a lot of football. The way that he plays, the demands and physical demands that he put himself under, really, you do wonder how many more years he's got at the very top level of the Premier League. So I do think maybe, De Bruyne would probably want a contract extension to stay, even though he's got 1 year left. That's how football works. And then Manchester City just want to probably see it out and sort of kind of see where it goes. So I think the point about this Mail story is, can the two parties almost agree somewhere in the middle and find common ground? I'm sure actually they will, because he's such an outrageous, brilliant talent that actually it probably demands it.
Yep, indeed. And he hinted, didn't he, earlier in the summer about the financial rewards being significant, even for a player of his stature available in Saudi Arabia. Back to the back page of the Star, Charlotte. Prem in on FIFA attack. Premier League's joined forces with European counterparts to fight a legal battle with FIFA as the row over the new 32-team Club World Cup hots up. How serious a story? How ugly do you think this could get for football, Charlotte?
Yeah, I think it could get quite ugly. I think if the court action succeeds, then FIFA might not be able to have control of the international calendar anymore. I think at what point are they going to take a step back and look and think this is just too much? Like if you look at the Club World Cup next summer, these players just aren't going to get a break. I think if we go back to when they played the World Cup in Qatar, then they came straight back. I know we had the break in the Premier League. They came straight back. Then they're going into pre-season tours. I think we were starting to see the ramifications of that last season with the excessive amount of injuries that we were seeing across all leagues. And I think the more and more competitions they expand, the more and more strain that's being put on these players. I think they're more well within their rights, to complain about it and hit out, because at what point does it become too much? And also, all of this is about football being a brand, isn't it? It's about making money. It's about the product, but the product is going to slowly diminish the more and more you put it out everywhere, and the players are going to be fatigued. They're going to be injured. For me, it's just sometimes it's a little bit too much, and it feels like it's going that way at the minute.